Hi, I'm Jill Reinhardt with the Natural Resources Conservation Service. For the last 92 years, NRCS has helped people help the land through voluntary conservation activities. Today, we'll be talking about barriers to NRCS assistance that have been identified by our partners. I'm a management analyst with the Outreach and Partnerships Division, and I'll let my colleague Havala introduce herself.
Thanks, Jill. Hi, everybody. I'm Havala Schumacher. I am also a management analyst with NRCS's Outreach and Partnerships Division. So NRCS's Outreach and Partnerships Division supports outreach activities across the agency through national agreements, policy guidance, support for our state offices, and analysis of outreach activities. We provide regular training and networking opportunities for our state outreach coordinators who are our boots on the ground working every day to help connect communities with NRCS. We recently rolled out a centralized outreach reporting database for use by all NRCS employees who conduct outreach. And by collecting outreach information centrally, we hope to better assess where outreach is happening and whether what we're doing is effective. Through our National Tribal Liaison, we continue to assess ways NRCS can better serve tribal producers and communities. And we manage equity and conservation outreach cooperative agreements. These agreements with partners nationwide help us extend NRCS outreach to farmers, ranchers, and communities who might not otherwise have connected with us.
Outreach is about relationship building. Outreach is a continuous process that builds community networks and working relationships between producers and NRCS. Funding invested in conservation outreach supports relationship and trust building that increases awareness of NRCS programs and services in historically underserved communities. As awareness and relationships build, requests for technical assistance from NRCS offices increase. This new group of NRCS customers becomes knowledgeable about how to apply for programs, resulting in new program applications, financial assistance contracts, and increased conservation practices. Growing a new base of NRCS customers with whom we have trusted relationships requires a long-term view. Equity and conservation outreach agreements result in increased partner capacity. This, in turn, enables our partners to provide outreach to communities and train mentors and community leaders. These trusted, skilled individuals are ultimately the key to encouraging additional participation, ultimately driving increased NRCS program participation.
How do we reach underserved producers, including new and beginning farmers and ranchers, veterans, and those with limited resources? First, we need to find them. We can use census data and other information sources to see where these groups may be farming, but sometimes that's not quite enough. Finding organizations who work with these groups can often help us find and build relationships with these farmers and ranchers. By partnering with organizations or other local community groups focused on underserved communities, we can connect and build relationships with new customers. Often, state or local NRCS offices have done some of this work already and can help us connect partners to these groups.
So let's look at how NRCS has utilized equity and conservation outreach cooperative agreements for this work. We have funded 255 partnership agreements at a total of $118 million for 2 rounds of funding in fiscal years 22 and 23. These projects fund partners who help NRCS expand conservation assistance to underserved producers and communities. The priorities of this funding have focused on addressing local natural resource issues, promoting conservation career opportunities, promoting the adoption of climate-smart conservation practices, encouraging conservation in small-scale and urban agriculture, and developing conservation leadership skills and opportunities.
The Outreach and Partnerships Division took a look at what our agreement recipients were finding as barriers for underserved farmers and ranchers to connecting with NRCS programs and services. Through focus groups, surveys, and one-on-one conversations, these partners shared barriers that are still being encountered. These barriers fall into 6 main categories: awareness of programs and services, simply knowing that NRCS exists; financial barriers, such as the high cost of purchasing equipment; timeframe or process barriers. The application, selection, and contracting process can be long and confusing; cultural barriers, such as language or cultural methods of farming; and control of land or land access, such as heirs property issues.
A few of our projects have produced reports focused on barriers to participation. The Soil and Water Conservation Society created a diversity, equity, and inclusion guidebook for conservation professionals after facilitating roundtable discussions with producers, producer organizations, and conservation professionals. They identified some common barriers to conservation planning. These include historic lack of trust and productive relationships, a lack of targeted outreach to historically underserved producers, language and terminology barriers, a lack of access to local experts, this stemming from awareness and financial barriers, and confusing conservation program application processes, meaning that you have to look at working with multiple agencies, there are many steps, and the process may not be as transparent as we would like.
Food Group Minnesota, an agreement recipient, found 5 main barriers for underserved producers they worked with in Minnesota. These included navigating complex systems, difficulties understanding eligibility criteria, application timelines and processes, payment and reimbursement options, cultural relevance and accessibility, tailoring to specific needs such as land access, establishing infrastructure and urban farming, building trust and relationships, indicating the need for consistent, reliable, and culturally sensitive technical support, and advising NRCS to come to farmers' spaces, meetings, etc. Technical assistance follow-up, or the need for personalized one-on-one support, and community and peer support, the need to create opportunities for historically underserved farmers to connect and support each other, enhancing collective knowledge.
We'd like to share a few examples of projects that identified and worked to overcome barriers with these groups. The first is the Ohio Ecological Food and Farm Association, or OEFA. This group was awarded a little over $300,000 in funding for 2 years, focused on work in Ohio. Their goal was to increase access to NRCS programs and services and reduce barriers for producers to adopting conservation practices. Some of the barriers they identified in Ohio include land access, navigating the federal programs, the uncertain application process, and the farm registration process. Some of the activities they undertook include educational programming, providing technical assistance, developing grower-to-grower networks, and directly connecting historically underserved producers to NRCS. As a result of their extra effort in education, technical assistance, and connecting producers, 71% of participants reported an increase in their understanding of conservation practices, activities, and enhancements in 2 of NRCS's main programs, Environmental Quality Incentives Program and Conservation Stewardship Program. 4 out of 5 participants now have intentions to implement climate-smart agriculture practices in their operations.
Dairy Grazing Apprenticeship's 2022 project sought to enhance grazing management for underserved dairy producers for the purpose of improving environmental outcomes and financial viability of small and mid-sized dairy farms. Their project to create climate-smart training and engaged in outreach to increase awareness of NRCS and other resources. They found that barriers to the producers they interacted with included communication, including understanding where to access resources, and lack of hands-on guidance, as well as cultural barriers, including challenges faced by producers whose first language was not English. Dairy Grazing Apprenticeship increased outreach and engaged mentors and apprentices to address this communication barrier. Participants benefited from increased channels to receive information and hands-on direct assistance. They also translated their Paddock Track app into Spanish and included Spanish speakers in events and training classes. This resulted in increased engagement, including 1,200 listserv subscribers, and increased engagement by Spanish-speaking producers.
Clemson University was awarded nearly $600,000 to work in South Carolina. Their goal was to enhance Clemson cooperative extension outreach efforts to increase underserved farmers' knowledge of NRCS and climate-smart conservation practices. The barriers they saw included the lack of clarity and visibility in the application process, program awareness, including deadlines, qualifications, and program details, and just not receiving information about what was available from NRCS. The activities they undertook included increasing awareness of NRCS programs and services in everything that they did. So whenever Cooperative Extension met with producers, they shared information about NRCS. They attended as many meetings as they could where they could share this information, as well as providing one-on-one technical assistance about how to work with NRCS and our programs. As a result, 97% of the participants they surveyed gained new knowledge. 83% plan to implement practices that they learned about. They were also able to launch a new and beginning forest family landowner online program. And Clemson Extension also developed an advanced new and beginning farmer program. So we've talked a lot about these 6 common barriers to participation. Let's share a little bit about the ways that our recipients have overcome these barriers. So I'll share just one component or one idea for each of these barriers with you. For awareness of programs and services, our recipients developed key partnerships with universities, other government agencies, and locally led organizations that already have trusted, established relationships with historically underserved communities. So to increase awareness, they worked through partners that were already working with these audiences. To address communication barriers, our recipients suggest offering variable times, locations, and communication styles that can help bridge the cultural, educational, and experiential divides. To help with financial barriers, try using all options available for increased payment rates or advanced payments. Basically, make sure that any extra incentives that can be utilized by your audience are offered and that folks are aware of them. For time frame and process barriers, offer one-on-one technical assistance to those who need help navigating the eligibility, application, and documentation requirements of NRCS and other USDA programs. And this might mean working through partners or subcontracts in order to find that one-on-one assistance. In addressing cultural barriers, suggestions include identifying the needs first, then establishing a connection with partners for outreach in those targeted areas. So again, working through trusted partners. And when dealing with control of land issues and land access, supply the resources and connections for land ownership opportunities. Basically, connect these producers to resources that are available.
So how can you help ensure that producers are connected to NRCS? Getting conservation assistance on the ground is an all-hands-in activity. NRCS and our partners are working every day to increase our visibility, awareness of resources, and address persistent barriers to accessing programs and services. If you'd like to help, here are a few ideas. We hope to have additional opportunities through funding through the Equity and Conservation Outreach Cooperative Agreement Program. If this funding becomes available, our ability to reach deeply into communities and find trusted partners depends on the awareness of this funding. If you haven't visited your local NRCS office lately, the best time is now. Ask how you can help reach additional communities and audiences. You can help build relationships. Many of our successful projects take a direct, hands-on approach, making introductions between producers and NRCS, and providing guidance, support, and mentorship throughout the application process. Your local soil and water conservation district and state technical committees need community-focused experts to help guide decision-making and communicate out to local communities. And you can simply share information on training opportunities, program signups, and processes.
Thank you for taking the time to learn more about the Equity and Conservation Outreach Cooperative Agreements and their work. You can learn more about these projects on the NRCS Outreach and Partnerships website.